Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group, September 19th, 2020. I am Julia Hatton, and I am the chair of the DACAG. Before we do a roll call, I'll give everyone a quick reminder that Senate Bill 544 requires members of the DACAG who are participating remotely to please remain visible on camera. If you're having any challenges with internet connectivity during this time that are preventing you from being visible to other members in the public, or if you need to step away for a quick minute, please just publicly announce the reason that you're off camera as soon as possible. And I will now proceed to roll call, and we'll read the names one by one. And we'll start with Abimael. It doesn't look like he's here yet. Chelsea is absent. Chris?
Here.
Elena.
Sorry, having trouble with unmute. I'm here.
Hi. Fred.
Here.
Jem.
Here.
Hi, Jem. Julia is here. Aman is going to be joining us in about an hour. Sarah.
Here.
Tonight.
Here.
And I think that is everyone. And I believe, let's see, do we have quorum? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we have quorum, so we can move forward with both the meeting and with any votes that we may take. That brings us to item 2, which is general public comment. And I will turn it over to Zara to provide meeting reminders and instructions.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Zara Jamshed. I'm support staff for the DACAG and a regulatory analyst at the CPUC. Supporting us today are my colleagues Dorothy Marimi and Eleanor Willman. We are also joined by legal support from CEC with Renee Webster-Hawkins and Vanessa Baldwin from the CPUC, as well as Deputy Public Advisor Ryan Young. A few reminders. This meeting is being recorded and is being held both remotely and in person in San Francisco. Our DACAG meeting lead is facilitating the meeting today and will conduct roll call item votes for anything the DACAG is voting on to ensure a clear record. We've enabled WebEx's closed captioning feature to make the meeting more accessible. To use the closed captioning, please click the bottom left CC icon or press Control-Shift-A. Once the captions are turned on, attendees can click the icon with the 3 dots for more options at the bottom right of the caption box to view captions and highlights. Please note that the chat feature is not available to attendees and is solely for panelists to ask for technical, procedural, or legal support. Now on to the instructions for public comment. This public comment period is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to mute and unmute. For anyone in the room, please raise your hand. Seeing no one in the room, let's check WebEx. Looks like we have a hand raised from Dylan Dupree. You should be able to unmute and give your comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the advisory group. My name is Dylan Dupree with Bright Sky Renewables, and I'm here on behalf of our customer, Los Gatos Tomato Products, a family-owned tomato processor and one of the largest employers in the city of Huron, located in eastern Fresno County. We've been working on a shovel-ready 4-megawatt solar project, which will help offset the plant's energy use. This project matters not just for the facility's long-term operations, but for the hundreds of people employed at the plant and the families in Huron who depend on those jobs. The success of this project directly supports local jobs and economic stability. Huron is one of the most disadvantaged communities in California. Out of 482 cities in the state, it consistently ranks in the bottom 3 to 5 for poverty and household income. Huron is the definition of a disadvantaged community. After more than 2.5 years of interconnection studies with PG&E, the project is at risk of qualifying for the NEM 2 tariff because of utility-caused delays. These procedural delays threaten the facility's eligibility under NEM 2 and jeopardize the project's overall viability. Because of Huron's DAC status, it's critical that the Commission and its advisory groups understand how delays like this jeopardize clean energy investments, reliable energy access, and equitable benefits for communities most in need. As I understand it, the role of this group is to advise the CPUC and CEC on how energy policies affect disadvantaged communities. This project is exactly about that, ensuring affordable, reliable, and equitable access to clean energy in one of California's poorest communities, while also protecting good local jobs. What we're asking is simple, that you hear this concern, but consider raising it directly with the CPUC and PG&E, urging them to grant the extension needed to keep this project alive. These delays weren't caused by the customer or the community, they were caused by the utility. Even though the governor has called for shovel-ready projects like this to be accelerated, PG&E has so far refrained from using its discretion to act. If nothing changes, Huron will lose a project that would deliver cleaner power, economic stability, and resilience to a community that needs it most. I'll place my contact email in the chat and welcome any advice, advocacy, or support this group can provide to make sure PG&E does right by Huron, its workers, and its future. I'd be glad to return and have this included on a future agenda or to respond to any question during today's public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Seeing no more raised hands, I'll pass it back to you, Julia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dawn, for sharing your comments. That certainly does seem like the type of, the specific type of issue that, that this body should be able to weigh in on. While we don't typically address specific projects, the broader issue of interconnections is one that I know has come up a lot in this group. There are folks on this call who know a lot more about that than I do. But that does seem to be a consistent and persistent barrier towards getting these clean energy projects off the ground in some of the communities that need it most. Is there anyone who has direct familiarity with this specific project or with interconnections more broadly that wants to share anything? And if not, I think we have Commissioner Douglas here. Maybe Commissioner Douglas has something to share.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Walker. Yeah, I'm curious about reasons why there have been delays on PG&E's side for interconnection, understanding that interconnection is a systemic challenge throughout California in getting distributed energy resources interconnected. There are various equity programs that track interconnection timelines. I think there's also some more global tracking of interconnection timelines. And I've heard a lot of advocates over time call for having interconnection timelines be paired with teeth. So penalties when IOUs, et cetera, miss timelines for getting those projects done, but Yeah, every project is different, so I'm curious about the particulars in this instance and would love to follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Julia and Chris. I appreciate the help. I think one of the primary issues we're having right now is there just doesn't seem to be a good avenue for these types of, I would say, interconnection disputes. The NEM2 tariff does give discretion to the IOUs to provide extensions based on quote unquote utility caused delays, but we've had little to no success with PG&E. We have elevated the issue to various folks at the CPUC. That was actually how I was directed here today to participate in this meeting. So we're just trying to understand, or at least get some guidance on perhaps getting a pathway to resolution without having to file a formal complaint. The issue at hand is pretty well documented. We have retained counsel at this point to help push the issue in front of folks at the CPUC, but we're just lacking an understanding of what the appropriate avenue would be to seek a fair resolution.
Yeah, and Dylan, we have a question in the chat that I'm not sure that you can see. Could you spell the project name, please?
Yes, it's Los Gatos Tomato Products.
Got it. Thank you. Does anyone have any resources to share, or is there anyone who might follow up with Dylan offline? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name. Was it Dylan or John?
Yeah, my name is Dylan Dupre.
Dylan.
Yes.
And I thought you were going to post your contact info in the chat, but
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I will.
Okay.
I will post my email and my contact info.
yeah, okay. But yeah, I'd like to chat offline if you have some time.
Great.
I've
Thanks,
had
Fred.
I've had some involvement with some PG&E projects and some issues, sometimes technical, and sometimes it's about getting the right group of people in the room to work through and find a solution. So
I think that's right. I think that's right. So thanks for your help.
you bet.
Appreciate that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd
Thank
be
you.
interested in following up offline as well.
Thank you.
Great.
And
Thanks, Chris.
I don't believe Dylan can use the chat. Can someone able to help us get his contact information?
I had reached out to Zara yesterday via email.
Okay.
So she has my contact information. I'm happy to share it with anyone. It's just, I'll just for the record, Dylan, DYLAN at brightskyrenew, RENEW.com.
Okay, Dylan, thank you so much. And yeah, Zara, if you could share that information with Chris and Fred, that would be great.
Can do.
Thank you. And Abimael, welcome. Nice to see you. Okay, great. I like when we get public comment. That's always helpful. Let's move it to item 3, which is our opening remarks by CEC and CPUC leadership. I'd like to start by acknowledging the commissioners for joining us today. I can't always see everyone who is here, so please, if I miss you, let me know. It does not look like Commissioner Gallardo is here. Is that right? Commissioner Houck. I don't think Commissioner Houck is here, but I see Commissioner Douglas. Would you like to give any remarks?
I will, thanks. And I know where Commissioner Houck and Commissioner Gallardo are. This is the day of the CEC is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And I stepped out of that to give some opening remarks. And I think probably all the commissioners to the extent where, I will be going in and out a bit. And I know that they're there, but we all really appreciate our engagement with the DACAG and find it valuable to take part in these meetings and listen in. And so I'm really happy to be here. And I will be in and out. And I do want to say for the public commenter, it sounds like there are people in the CPUC who he should be getting in touch with, and perhaps Zara could help him find some contacts he may already have. And I don't have an easy answer about what the exact way to go is, but we can certainly help him with who he should contact. And so with that, anyway, I'm very pleased to be here, and I know you have some interesting agenda topics that I hope to be listening in on for at least some of them. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Appreciate you being here, and congratulations to the CEC on the 50th anniversary. That's a big deal. It's exciting. Do we have any other remarks from leadership or leadership offices before I move on to the next agenda? Okay. That takes us to item 4, our meeting minutes. We are hoping to approve the minutes for both the July and August meetings. We are going to start with item 4, which is, item 4A, which are the July 18th, 2025 DACAG meeting minutes. And we need to first open those up for public comment.
Thank you. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 4A. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand, and then press *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, please raise your hand. Seeing no comments in the room, we'll check on WebEx. Seeing no raised hands, pass it back to you, Julia.
Great. Okay, unless there is any DACAG member discussion on the minutes, do we have a motion to approve item 4A? And please note that if you are absent for a meeting, you can still vote on this item as long as you reviewed the materials. So I'm going to do a roll call vote. Abimael?
I don't remember being present at that one, so I'll have to pass.
Okay, Chelsea is not here. Chris?
Aye.
Elena?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Jem?
Aye.
Julia? Aye. Ramon is not here. Sarah?
Aye.
Great. And Sunny?
Aye.
Great. I believe that item passes. Thank you.
Sorry, did I miss did somebody motion to make a second?
I
Sorry.
missed, I totally forgot to do that.
Okay.
I can
Yeah, we do that
retroactively motion. I'll retroactively second.
Thank you.
Sorry, was that Elena seconding and
Yes,
who was making, who made the initial motion?
Oh my God, I don't think I did that part either.
You want me to
Can
make a
we-
motion?
Can it
Can I-
be me? Okay.
I don't know if you can, yeah, I actually don't know the
Okay.
rules. Stop. Just taking the notes here. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
The dog is barking. Threw me off. Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 4B is approval of the August 15th, 2025 DACAG meeting minutes. And we start with public comment.
Thank you. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 4B. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, please raise your hand. Seeing no one in the room, we will check WebEx. Seeing no raised hands, I'll pass it back to you, Julia.
Thank you, Zara. Do we have a motion to approve item 4B?
This is Sarah. I will do that motion.
Thank you, Sarah. And who will second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We will now take a roll call vote. Say aye if you're in favor, nay if you oppose, or indicate if you will abstain. And we'll start with Mayal.
Abstain.
You abstain. Chelsea is absent. Chris?
Aye.
Elena?
Abstain.
Fred?
Aye.
Jem?
Aye.
Julia? Aye. Roman is not here. Sarah?
Aye.
Tonight?
Aye.
Okay, I think we had 2 abstentions. Does that still pass?
It still passes. You have a
Great.
majority of those present.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 5 is on the base services charge. So we're going to have CPU staff provide an update on this charge. This is previously known as the income graduated fixed charge. This was based on a fixed monthly charge based on income tiers that lowers usage-based electricity rates for all residential customers, including households. And for this item, I'd like to welcome Ankit Jain and Cheryl Wynn from the CPUC to present.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Ankit Jain. I'm the supervisor of the rate discount section and energy division at the CPUC, and I'm joined by Cheryl Wynn, senior analyst in the rate discount section. Could we go to the next slide? So the income graduated fixed charges, now known as the base services charge, that's a name change that was recommended by the utilities based on research that they did on customer understanding and acceptance of the fixed charges. It was something that was taken up in the demand flexibility proceeding, R2207-005. That proceeding had an overall goal of improving affordability outcomes and promoting electrification through reform of electricity rates. There was 2 tracks in that proceeding. Track A dealt with the implementation of the AB 205 requirements, which is what we're going to primarily be talking about today. The second track, Track B, dealt with the development of a framework for dynamic rates, as well as the systems and processes to support dynamic rates. Not going to be the focus of today's conversation. We'll be focusing on Track A. So next slide. So what is in AB 205? This is a piece of legislation that was passed by the legislature and signed into law in the summer of 2022. Had a couple of key elements associated with it. First, it removed the prior cap on fixed charges and default residential rates. Previously, fixed charges were capped at $10 a month for non-care customers and $5 a month for care customers. I'll quickly just note that even though that cap existed, the utilities didn't include any, or if they did include any fixed charge, they were quite minimal. That's the current rate structure that's in place right now. AB 205 also authorized the CPUC to, if it does authorize any fixed charges in residential rates, requires that those fixed charges are income graduated, meaning that they are progressively higher based on the amount of household income that is associated with the customer. And that income graduation scheme needed to include a minimum of 3 tiers. It also required that resulting bills for low-income ratepayers, which for the purposes of this discussion are care and FARA customers, in each baseline territory or climate zone must be lower without any change in usage. The bill also allowed for the recovery of certain public purpose program charges through the fixed charge. It also made a small change to the definition of the care effective discount. Essentially, it effectively increases the care effective discount by a few percentage points by considering the exempt charges that care customers are not required to pay to be incremental to the 30 to 35% discount that they currently receive. So effectively, that increases the total discount that they receive by a couple percentage points. And very importantly, the legislation also required that the CPUC authorize income graduated fixed charges in default residential rates by July of 2024, which was that requirement was met with the adoption of a decision in May of 2024, which directs the utilities to implement income graduated fixed charges or base services charges. And I'll go over what those requirements entail and what the timeline is for the implementation in the next couple of slides. So next slide. So I'm not going to spend too much time or go into too much detail on the next 2 slides here. They're mostly here to provide context for AB 205, but happy to come back to this and spend more time on it and answer any questions after we're done with the presentation. The key takeaway here is that the historical context is that rates have been rapidly rising in California in recent years, with fixed costs such as wildfire spending being a key driver of those rate increases. That's important because residential rates in California are currently purely usage-based, which leads to basically an inequitable recovery of that large and growing proportion of revenue requirement that's tied to fixed costs. If you go to the next slide. And the other piece of context that's important here is that fixed charges are a well-known and widely used approach for a more equitable fixed cost recovery in residential rates. They reduce the usage-based rate by shifting a portion of cost recovery to a flat fee that all customers pay each month. And by reducing that usage-based rate, it improves affordability outcomes, particularly for customers with the highest bills who have the highest affordability concerns. And it also promotes electrification by making the cost associated with using electric appliances and electric vehicles cheaper. So we'll get into that a bit more later in the presentation, both in terms of the improvements of affordability as well as the improvements in electrification incentives. However, the other important thing to take away from this slide is that we have historically not used fixed charges in California because if they were implemented uniformly, meaning that the same fixed charge was applied to all customers regardless of income level, there has historically been a concern that it would lead to bill increases, particularly for low-income, low-usage customers. And so there's a concern that there's a regressive element to uniform fixed charges. The legislature's solution to this was to authorize fixed charges that are applied on a progressive basis based on income. And I'm going to get into how we went about doing that over the course of the next few slides. So go to the next slide. I'm not going to go through all the details on the procedural timeline here. This is just a kind of an overview of how we got from the opening of the rulemaking back in the fall of 2022 to where we are today. Key things that I want to point out are that early in the proceeding, we invited parties to provide testimony on how to implement an income graduated fixed charge structure that included potential new income verification processes. When we received that testimony, we didn't find that parties had fully fleshed out ideas as to how to truly income verify customers using new processes. And subsequently, the commission directed parties to submit revised proposals that relied on existing income verification processes, and primarily the processes that are used to enroll customers into the CARE and FARA programs. So necessarily that kind of limited the structure of the fixed charges that we would adopt through this decision. But we felt that given the time, the urgency of addressing the affordability and electrification concerns, it was advisable to implement something in the near term that relied on existing income verification processes and take up the issue of a successor to the initial income graduated fixed charge or base services charge in a successor proceeding. So in May of 2024, the commission adopted a decision, D-24-05-028, and that directed the utilities to implement the fixed charge structure that I'm going to go over in the next couple of slides, with the requirement that SCE and SDG&E implement this DSC by Q4 of 2025 and PG&E by Q1 of 2026. So go to the next slide. So this is just a quick overview of the fixed charge structure that was adopted in that decision. As I mentioned, the fixed charge structure, because it relies on existing income verification processes through the CARE and FARA programs, overlays with the existing rate structure that we have, where we have CARE customers, FARA customers, and then non-CARE FARA population with income thresholds of 200% of federal poverty guidelines for CARE customers, 250% for FARA customers, and then customers who earn over 250% of federal poverty guidelines being enrolled in the third income tier for the fixed charge. With the structure that was adopted, non-CARE FARA customers would pay the market rate fixed charge of $24.15 a month. FARA customers would receive a discounted fixed charge of $12 a month, and CARE customers would pay only a $6 a month fixed charge. The only other nuance here is that in addition to allowing FARA customers to enroll in the Tier 2 fixed charge, that tier was also made available to customers who live in deed-restricted affordable housing units, as identified through the California Housing Partnership database. So those are customers who earn less than 80% of AMI, and that is meant to address the concerns that some parties had regarding relatively low-income customers who live in high cost of living areas. So if we go to the next slide. So with the implementation of these fixed charges, that allows the utilities to reduce their volumetric rates, the usage-based rates, thereby providing the benefit to customers in terms of affordability and electrification that I mentioned earlier. The decision requires that the rate reductions be applied across all time of use periods, and that they're applied on an equal cents per kilowatt hour basis across all time of use periods. Based on the data that was available at the time of the decision, we estimated that those rate reductions would be on the order of 4 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour for each of the IOUs. You can see how they vary slightly across the three large IOUs here. And that comes out to approximately 8 to 10% reduction in the summer peak rates, with larger percent reductions for the non-summer peak periods, because those are lower cost periods, but we are still applying the same 4 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour reduction during those periods. The decision also requires that optional rates also include the same fixed charge structure, and so these fixed charges are also going to be applied to electrification and EV rates as well. So go to the next slide. Just to give a sense of what, what the CPUC's decision, how it compares to the other proposals that were considered in this proceeding, as well as to what is currently being implemented in the publicly owned utility service territories across the state. This slide shows kind of the CPUC's decision as it compares to the other proposals. It's fairly, middle of the road compared to what parties were proposing, both on the low end and the high end, in terms of the fixed charge that would be applied to the non-care FARA population. Also, this fixed charge is comparable to the fixed charges that are applied in publicly owned utility service territories, and it actually exactly matches what is currently in place for customers in the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, or SMUD. Go to the next slide. So the next couple of slides are going to go, well, first of all, they provide a lot of numbers here that I'm not going to go over in detail. This is meant to just provide an estimate for, or a sense for what the bill impacts would be for average usage customers in each baseline territory amongst the care, FARA, and non-care FARA populations. So as I mentioned, the AB 205 requirement is that the implementation of these fixed charges should result in lower bills for the low-income population in all baseline territories. You can see that across all climate zones in PG&E's territory and also in the other two utility territories, care and FARA customers are expected to, on average, see a bill decrease. That's by nature of the fact that they are receiving a discounted fixed charge and also a reduction in the usage-based rate, that 4 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour reduction that I mentioned earlier. The other key takeaway to take from this slide and the next couple of slides is that the other population that's really benefiting from this, even amongst the non-care FARA population, are customers who live in the hotter climate zones. And this makes sense when you think about the fact that these are higher usage customers on average, who largely driven by their high air conditioning loads during the summer. And so because those customers are receiving a large reduction in their usage-based rate, that discount is more than enough to offset the $24 a month that they would be paying in the fixed charge. And therefore, those customers in the hotter climate zones, which in PG&E's cases, climate zones P, Q, R, S, and W, and I apologize that there are so many numbers here, and this is a small map to kind of parse, that those customers in those hot climate zones will see a bill discount compared to what they are paying currently under the purely usage-based rates. This is important because, in the CPUC's investigation of where affordability concerns are most prevalent or most of a concern in the state, we found that it's really in the hotter climate zones where the affordability concerns are most acute. There's two main reasons for that. These hotter climate zones, as I mentioned, customers have much higher usage levels driven primarily by high air conditioning load needs during the summer months. And these hotter climate zones in the inland areas also tend to be relatively lower income compared to the coastal areas where the usage levels are lower. So this is kind of correcting that inequity that exists in current rates, where a disproportionate amount of fixed cost recovery is being collected from customers in the hotter climate zones where usage levels are higher. We can go to the next slide. I will mention again, this is the next two slides are going to be similar to the one that we just saw, showing the bill impacts for PG&E, but same story for SCE, and then on the next slide, SDG&E. Care and FARA customers are expected to see monthly bill reductions as a result of the implementation of this base services charge, and non-care FARA customers on average in the hotter climate zones will also see bill reductions. So if we go to the next slide. Similar story here. And then if we go to the next slide. I also want to talk a little bit about the electrification benefits associated with this change in the rate structure. Because the usage-based rate is being reduced, this also provides customers with an additional incentive to adopt electrification technologies, which is something that is a goal for the state in general in terms of our energy policy. What this table provides is for each of the IOUs an indication of how the bill impact associated with different levels of electrification change when we go from the current usage-based, purely usage-based rate structure to one that features the income graduated fixed charge or the base services charge. Again, because the usage-based rate is being reduced by a significant amount, that is providing customers with, it provides customers with a savings associated with using electrified home appliances and electric vehicles compared to what they would otherwise pay if all cost recovery was achieved through a purely usage-based rate. And again, there's a lot of numbers here. I apologize for that. My intent is not to go over this in detail, but to provide you with this information so that if there's any questions, we can dig into the data in more detail. So that is kind of an overview of the income graduated fixed charges in terms of what was adopted in the decision. We also want to talk a little bit about what's going on currently in terms of implementation, marketing, education, and outreach, and the next steps for the successor proceeding. So for that, I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl Wynn. If we can go to the next slide.
Thank you, Ankit. I have, oops, did we skip some slides?
Yeah, I think that, sorry, I thought that we had a couple of additional slides that we added earlier today. Did they not make it into the deck?
Give me one moment, apologies.
I've also got the deck that includes those slides. If it's okay, I can share my screen instead, if that works for you.
Sure, that sounds fine. Well, I find it on my end.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ankit. And I have 5 slides, so I'm going to try and go through those relatively quickly so we can have time for questions. But I did want to talk about the marketing, education, and outreach plans, which in the 2024 decision require the utilities to propose marketing, education, outreach plans. And then the commission adopted those plans with modifications for SCE and SDG&E in December of last year, and for PG&E in January of this year, so those can align with their implementation dates, which I'll talk about a little bit later on this slide. But the utilities, drawing on some of their best practices when they established the time of use transition that was pursuant to a 2015 decision, they took some of those learnings and they came up with a 3-phased approach to ensure that customers understand what was happening, when it was happening, and why it was happening. Why are we making these changes to their bill? So phase 1 is really designed to increase awareness about the base services charge. It refers to AB 2005. It sets the context for the change. And then in phase 2 is designed to, or it focuses on explaining why the change is happening, including providing customers with sampleable impacts so they can understand how the change will personally impact them. And then in phase 3 is the engagement phase. This is post implementation, where the utilities will continue to provide ongoing bill and rate education to the customers, including directing them to programs that can help to better manage their energy usage and cost. So the market education and outreach plans include direct customer communications to customers in advance of all these changes taking place, so that there's no surprises. So I would say SCE and SDG&E probably started communications 1 to 2 months in advance of their actual implementation date. And PG&E has already started with reaching out to the deed restricted affordable housing customers. And so the outreach campaigns will include their website as a hub, direct mail, email, paid and earned media, such as paid media, adding the base services charge to the search engines so customers can quickly find information about the base services charge. Also, they have used all their platforms, Facebook, Twitter, it's not Twitter, it's X now. Let's see, Instagram, YouTube. So they're using all platforms, social media platforms, to get the word out, to educate customers, to inform them about the changes coming to their bills. They've also trained community-based organizations so they can go out in the disadvantaged communities and get the word out and get customers ready and prepared for this upcoming change to their customer bills. The campaigns or the tactics that the utilities have adopted, they are consistent across the IOUs. Ankit talked about the terminology, the base services charge. All the utilities are using that terminology in all their marketing campaigns, as well as all of their high-level messaging. They all have developed customer segmentation strategies to target specific customers, the care customers, the fair customers, solar customers. And all the utilities, they are now starting to report on the metrics for the implementation activities. And so in terms of implementation, October 1st, SDG&E customers will see the base services charge appear on their bill. For Edison, it's November 15th, and PG&E is March 1st of 2026. Next slide, please. On this slide, it's just a sample of the graphic that all the utilities are using to explain the changes that are taking place to customers' bills because of the base services charge. Each utility is using this graphic, but they have modified it so that the high, medium, low usage is based on their customers' average usage. And so you will see that there's the current bill, and then the green bar illustrates the energy delivery charge. The yellow bar is the generation charges, and then the blue bar is the new charge for the base services charge. And then the graphic on the right is just for illustration purposes only for today's meeting, but we just wanted to show how the base services charge will now appear as a line item on the customer's bill. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, the demand flexibility rulemaking has closed. However, there is a successor proceeding that is planned. We just don't have any details on that at this moment. And so there are two working groups that have been established for the base services charge, and they will continue supporting the implementation with the utilities. The implementation working group actually oversees all the marketing materials, all the messaging. We meet every month, and I'll talk about who's on that team in the next slide. So they provide very good feedback, and the utilities have been very responsive to those changes or suggestions to improve the messaging and all the marketing materials, the collateral materials that's going out to customers. And then there's also the income verification process working group, which is developing recommendations for a process to identify moderate and high income households. And so this report that they're working on currently is expected in the first quarter of 2026. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the base services charge implementation working group. The decision did require that the commission convene and facilitate this working group by commission staff, Energy Division. And so they're responsible, this working group is identifying any issues with the implementation of the base services charge, all the marketing efforts, and they provide recommendations real time during our monthly meetings. They're also planning to provide written recommendation to the commission on lessons learned from this first iteration of the income graduated fixed charge, and so that the commission will take a look at those and may consider those for the next round of fixed charges. What is not in scope for this base services charge working group is a discussion on the purpose or the necessity or the reasonableness of the base services charge. So we're all focused on implementation. Next slide. So here are the members. There's about 40 members in total. We have representation from Cal Advocates, of course, Energy Division, all three large IOUs, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, Pacific Gas and Electric. And then we have our parties that are also, members that are also parties to the proceeding. We have the Utilities Consumer Action Network, the Western Manufactured Housing Communities that represent the mobile home parks. And we also have TURN, C4AT, which is Center for Accessible Technology. And then for solar, we have the Solar Energy Industry Association. So I will say that all of these members work very, very hard. They come to the meetings well prepared, and they have been providing some very good insight and to help the utilities sort of shape their marketing plans to ensure that the customers have a really good understanding of what's to come and how to address the change in managing their utility bills. Is there another slide? If not, I think we'll take this time out. Is it time for questions?
Yes.
Any questions?
Yes, for questions. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen as well.
Okay, thank you so much for this presentation. This is really clear, really helpful. Before we move to DACAG discussion, is there any public comment on this item?
The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 5. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. For anyone in the room, please raise your hand.
Hi, this is Judith E. Clay staff. I just have a question. I know that on the slide, it said that this was for the default TOU rate that you did the analysis on the rates. I know that in a lot of multifamily homes, it's difficult to be on a TOU rate because then you have to use your washer or dishwasher or whatever, at 11 p.m. or 6 a.m. or 2 a.m. No. So I'm just wondering, did you do a analysis for people who opted out of TOU and what were the results of that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I have to remember, I do believe that, let me take a step back. When we were analyzing the base service charge proposals, we had worked with a consultant, E3, to develop a spreadsheet tool that would allow us to model various proposals and to estimate what the bill impacts are associated with those various proposals. I do believe that tool allowed us to look at not just the bill impacts under the TOU rates, but also under the default and, the tiered non-TOU rates, as well as optional rates such as electrification rates and EV rates. I don't have those results off the top of my head, but I do believe that we have those results. We can follow up with that as well, if that's helpful.
Okay, and then also it looked like you did some analysis on the EV household, right? A household with an EV, but were they on an EV rate, a home EV rate, or were they on just the default TOU rate?
So that electrification slide, I believe, and I will need to refresh my memory on this. Those assume the customer being on the default TOU rate. However, that tool that I mentioned does also, I believe it also allowed us to look at bill impacts for customers who are on an EV rate and how their bills would change with the implementation of the fixed charge. I don't have that information in this deck right now.
Okay, it might be interesting to have that analysis for these folks. Thank you.
Okay, let's return to the WebEx and see if anyone else has a public comment. And press the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. Or press *3 to raise your hand over the phone. Seeing no raised hands, I'll pass back to you, Julia.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from DACAG members for any questions or comments and discussion.
Yeah, I can start off. Thank you very much, Cheryl and Ankit. I hope this is a topic that the DACAG will follow over time, since it represents, I think, a significant and important change to how we calculate electric bills in the state of California. I wrote down so many questions, so I think I'll start at the top and asking how the working group was composed and whether that's going to be revisited over time.
I can take that question. So there's two working groups, but I'll speak specifically to the base service charge. We did an open solicitation. And so we sent that out through the service list, and pretty much whoever wanted to join and had, provided us with the information that was requested, they became members of the group. For the income verification working group, PG&E is actually the lead in soliciting a contractor to facilitate that working group. And so, Ankit, do you want to add any more to that?
Yeah, I'll just say that for that process working group, the consultant team did a similar solicitation process, reached out to particularly the parties that were very active in the demand flexibility proceeding on this Track A issue. So we have sort of a similar set of parties who are active in that working group. We've got input from the IOUs, from consumer advocates. TURN and NRDC are very active in that working group. So yeah, we've got good representation from a similar set of participants there.
Thank you. I'll hold my additional questions so that we can take turns here. See, Elena has her hand up.
I also, I think, have two questions. First of all, this was super interesting and very clear, and thank you very much for the presentation. I have two questions that maybe you addressed and I just missed. The first is, did you get a sense, I saw the percent reduction in the volumetric rate being charged. Did you calculate the percent bill reduction, in particular for Care and Farah customers on average? Not just the bill amount, but like, I'm thinking of this in cost burdens, basically. So like, what's the percent reduction here?
Yeah, so that's not something I have off the top of my head. We have obviously the average bill reductions by customer segment, by climate zone in the deck.
Yeah.
I would need to go back and find what the kind of the baseline is, what their bills are in the counterfactual scenario. I don't have that off the top of my head, but that's something we could follow up on.
Okay, I think that'd be very interesting information. And then the second question that I have is, and again, sorry if I missed this, is what is the mechanism for considering changes to this in the future? Like, is this within rate case? Is this some other proceeding? Like, how do changes to the fixed charge get decided in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that was something that was of particular interest to certain parties in the demand flexibility proceeding. And in response to comments on the proposed decision, we did make some revisions to the decision that specified that because this is a relatively new rate component, we didn't think that it was appropriate to allow for revisions to the base services charge at this time in GRCs. So we indicated that it would changes would be considered in a successor proceeding. Cheryl mentioned that we are in the process, or we are planning on opening a successor proceeding to take up issues related to the changes to the base services charge.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Back to Chris for more questions.
Yeah, and perhaps you just answered it, Ankit, in noting that future changes will be taken up in a successor proceeding, but if the working group is constrained from commenting on the reasonableness of the charge, is the proceeding the only sort of pathway through which changes to the level of the fixed charges will be sort of grappled with?
Yeah, that's right. And just to be clear, that kind of the limited scope that Cheryl mentioned was specifically about the base services charge implementation working group. Wanted to make sure that that working group is focused on the rollout of the base services charge and focused on making the marketing materials, the marketing and education materials as effective as possible. But yeah, future changes to the base services charge will be taken up in the successor proceeding. And I will mention that, yeah, that $24.15 a month fixed charge level, that is an absolute level that was written into the decision. So there is no opportunity for the utilities to increase that fixed charge unless it is through the successor proceeding.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask that, given that we're setting fixed charges largely based on participation in CARE FARA or not, how do we know that we have robust participation in CARE and FARA such that folks who would qualify for CARE and FARA rates are not going to be charged that highest fixed charge?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start with that, but I'll hand it over to Cheryl if she has additional thoughts here. For CARE, our understanding is that there is very robust participation in that program. Enrollment levels are above 90% across all of the large IOUs for the CARE program. We are in the process of opening the next program cycle application proceeding for the CARE FARA programs in the next few months, something that I imagine we will be discussing with this group in a future meeting. And we will be making additional efforts to improve, to maintain that high level of enrollment in the CARE program to ensure that all eligible customers are enrolled there. The FARA program does have a bit more difficulty. There are challenges there. Enrollment levels are a bit lower based on our estimates of eligibility. There has been some recent legislation, SB 1130, with the intent of both expanding the size of the eligible population for the FARA program, and also giving the CPUC more tools to work with the utilities to try to improve enrollment in the FARA program. So that is a continued focus for Energy Division and for the CPUC more generally. And so that's something that we're going to continue to work on. My expectation is that with the rollout of the base services charge, because customers who enroll in FARA get this additional benefit, not just the 18% discount on their usage-based rate, but also the 50% reduction on the base services charge. My hunch is that that additional incentive will help with improving enrollment in the FARA program. We'll see more customer interest in enrolling in that program going forward. Cheryl, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add, Ankit, everything you said, 100% correct. For CARE, we are at the utilities, the large utilities are actually over 100% of enrollment. And like Ankit said, for FARA, I will tell you that the utilities, they do know that this is an area that needs to be developed. They are looking at some innovative marketing strategies to increase enrollment in the FARA program. The CARE FARA proceeding, they're charged with increasing enrollment in CARE and FARA. But what we did with the base service charge proceeding is the utilities developed what we call an integrated or coordinated plan with the Care Fair proceeding, so that there's some linkages in that we can keep as many customers enrolled in those programs and increase enrollment as much as possible. So the base services charge team is also working with the Care Fair team, and you'll notice on the Care Fair application, you'll see a line item that talks about the base services charge. So that there's cross promotion to keep customers aware of this, what we call the discount. It's not, I hate the word discount, but the base services charge discount. And so that folks can, in fact, keep that, in mind when it comes time for them to re-enroll in Care Fair, that they will keep in mind that, hey, in order for me to maintain this discount, I need to maintain my enrollment in the Care Fair programs.
And just one additional clarification there, just because I saw a couple quizzical looks when Cheryl mentioned that in some of the IOU territories, care enrollment is over 100%. That's based on eligibility estimates. Obviously, those are not 100% accurate. So the reason why there might be greater than 100% enrollment in some areas is possibly due to errors in the eligibility estimates. Yeah, so I just want to clear that up.
Thank you, Ankit. And to that specific question, before I pass it to my colleagues, do we know what data set utilities or the CPUC are using to estimate potential eligibility?
Yeah, so there is a consultant who provides those eligibility estimates each year. I don't have the details under the methodology that they use, but that's a process that received input from the utilities, from consumer advocates groups, from the Low Income Oversight Board. There is going to be a little bit of a transition in that process. The consultant who has historically been doing those eligibility estimates is going to be retiring soon, and so we will be putting out a solicitation through the IOUs for a new consultant who will be taking up that work, and there might be some changes to the methodology going forward as well.
Thank you.
Let's do Sanite and then Sarah and then Elena.
I think Sarah was before me. I'll let her go.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you. The question was just related to the California climate credit and the process for that decision. I know that I believe there was some direction given by the legislature and the governor versus CPUC to handle that. And I don't know if the timing aligns with these changes at all, or if it will be a totally different timeline, but it just seems like another opportunity for these same households to be getting bill reductions. So I was wondering, it might be good to like message them together if possible.
Hello, this is Judith E. Clay in the Energy Division. I may as well take that one. Yes, there are two pieces of legislation that the governor signed this morning that are related to the climate program and the reauthorization and what we're now calling Cap and Invest, AB 1207 and SB 840. One of those bills had very prescriptive language about top of the bill messaging in terms of the climate credit. And also, we're going to look at different ways to distribute the climate credit in terms of times of year. One of them suggested high build months up to 4 times a year versus the current 2 times a year in lower build months, so that people are able to actually, see them and they're not masking those high demand times. So we are not ready to implement on the timeline that the base charge is coming in. And frankly, there's also a related proceeding that CARB may need to take in terms of some more degrees of flexibility in implementing the climate credit program. So I think we are going to be lagging but we, will be coordinating and there was some very specific language in terms of outreach approaches and things like that.
Thank you. Maybe we could get an update on that once it's more process or procedure is more figured out.
Yeah, I mean, there is already an OIR on the climate credit where comments are due on the 26th. So we'll have our first batch of comments in terms of just opening it up. But yeah, we're very, very early days. We're frankly, talking about how to resource these efforts right now. So yeah, once we have something to present, we'll present it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Senate.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, so we know that there is a wide range of income differences like people have, but just looking at the breakdown, I'm just trying to understand how that decision was made, because the rate breakdown you just showed seemed very simplified. It's CARE, FARA, and everybody else. It just seems like it's basically extreme poverty versus everyone else. But we know that in between there's hardworking families that may not qualify for CARE and FARA, but they are kind of included with everyone else who is making millions. What was the thought on that? Like, is there any way you can explain the breakdown of this income qualification rates?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really gets to kind of one of the major difficulties that we were kind of dealing with in this proceeding. Unfortunately, AB 205, although the goal of the legislation was to have a more progressive electricity rate structure, it didn't really provide a lot in the way of implementation mechanics for how we would identify customers who fall into that moderate income bracket that you're kind of identifying. And so we were kind of left, in the near term at least, with relying on the existing income verification tools that we have. And that primarily means relying on the CARE and FARA programs, and thus only being able to kind of distinguish between low-income customers and non-low-income customers. Given that limitation, the commission, through this decision, decided to pursue a much more limited fixed charge compared to what could be used to recover, that growing portion of the revenue requirement that includes all the fixed costs. The legislation authorizes the fixed charges to recover a reasonable portion of fixed costs, but what we're recovering through this $24 a month fixed charge is really not reflective of the total amount of fixed costs that are baked into rates. So there is still quite a bit of fixed cost recovery that's happening through the usage-based rates. And that's a recognition of the fact that if we were to have a higher fixed charge, that would pose a real burden for customers who fall into that moderate income bracket, the ones who can't qualify for CARE or FARA, but would struggle to pay with a much higher fixed charge. So that's sort of how the commission kind of came to this compromise. Is that kind of responsive to your question there?
I guess I can understand it. I mean, I don't think it's fair, but but it's, yeah, understandable. I accept your explanation.
This is Judith E. Clay. I just also comment, privacy of customers' income, was a real kind of barrier to doing this analysis, as we've kind of gamed out some of the climate stuff as well. Even if we were to look at is it their primary residence or not, and should we treat those differently or something? There are a lot of privacy concerns for if you want to, as you get more based on income. So.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Another question I have is that how, I think it's one of the slides, Cheryl, that you had about the breakdown of like low usage and middle usage and high usage customers. It just seems like the low usage customers are the ones that are paying more. So how do we go forward with incentivizing people saving energy if the low users are paying more?
So I'm gonna have Ankit ask that question. I don't know if that's true in all cases. And actually, Ankit, did you want to address that question?
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, so I think what I'd go back to is kind of what I was mentioning near the beginning of the presentation, where with our purely usage-based rates, there has historically been an inequitable recovery of fixed costs because all fixed costs are recovered through a usage-based rate. That means that the higher your usage, the more you're contributing to the poles and wires towards wildfire-related cost. And the thing about that is those costs are not, they don't scale with customers' usage. So the way that I would see this is more that those lower usage customers are now paying a more proportional amount towards fixed costs than they have historically. And yeah, so I think that that's where I would start. I would also, again, point to the fact that many of the affordability concerns that we have are with customers who have the highest usage levels, particularly in the hotter climate zones. So the other way to kind of view this is that we're providing relief to those customers who have the most significant affordability concerns. And obviously just recognizing the fact that this is just a rate design reform. We're not, through this proceeding, not affecting the total amount of revenue requirement. Providing relief to the customers who have the greatest affordability concerns necessarily does mean that some of those costs need to be shouldered by customers who have historically not paid a proportional share towards fixed costs.
I'm still struggling to understand that fact. Somebody say something.
And I'll just add, even with that little $10 fixed rate, there were some people I know of that had extremely low usage, had 10 years of $5 a month, and they all of a sudden went like 15 or something. I mean, it basically immediately increased their bill. So yeah, there has been some experience. I mean, I think you are talking about something if you have an extremely low use case that fixed charge is going to increase their bill. So
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I think the state is encouraging people to conserve energy, and then that's where I'm getting into. And then also when it comes to usages, as we're encouraging people to electrify and more people are driving EVs, and that tends to go towards like wealthy people doing it. First adopters are the people that could afford to do that. So they have higher energy usage. So they are using the service more than the low income people or the low energy users that did not have, they don't have electric cars or didn't electrify their homes. So they would be subsidizing the higher users in that case.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand the concern. You've mentioned the conservation signal through electricity rates a couple times, and if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that by lowering the usage-based rate for electricity, that we're cutting into that conservation signal.
Oh,
I guess is the concern that electricity rates are not high enough to send that signal effectively for customers to conserve?
Though, could we have that slide up again? Because I think maybe I'm not making myself clear.
Sure. Let me
Is
share
the
my
concern that folks are not being rewarded for lower usage the way they perhaps used to be?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at, the low usage, the top one. the current and new bills. The total, the current one shows 99, but then the new bill shows 101. That means it's increasing because of this. So, the generation cost being the same. So what is that increase? What's making the cost, the total cost increase?
The total cost is not increasing. The revenue requirement is staying the same. This is just a reform to the rate structure itself. The reason why the cost is going up for that lower usage customer is because the bill is going down for the higher usage customer. You can see the bill reductions for the medium and high usage customers here. That's essentially the trade-off.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. If people are using less energy, they have to pay more to compensate for the high energy users. Is that how it's structured?
Compared to the historical rate structure in which low usage customers have historically been not paying a proportional amount towards their fixed costs, yes, they are going to be paying now something closer to the proportional amount that they should be paying for their fixed costs.
Yeah, because the feedback I got when we all got this explanation for our utilities is a lot of people were unhappy because this is like, oh, I should be, compensated for saving energy, not for using more. It just seemed kind of counterintuitive to do that. But yeah, I'll let other people ask questions. Thanks.
Yes, I see Chris has a question, and then we are a little over time, so I'm gonna suggest that we move on, but also that we continue to follow this over time and continue to get updates on it, as someone has suggested. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, just the fundamental question that I keep coming back to is, given the legislative mandate, if we can call it that low-income ratepayers save money, how do we square that with the fact that rate setting is an independent function of the CPUC? So we're definitely getting higher fixed charges. We think we might be getting lower volumetric charges, but how do we know we're going to get lower volumetric charges?
So again, this is just a change in the way that the rates are structured. We're not changing the revenue requirement in any way. So that, the amount that the utilities were collecting before, they're collecting at the same amount down to the penny. It's just that it's now being calculated differently in terms of how each individual customer pays for their bill. I'll also say that we have been part of the decision and the subsequent implementation resolutions. We've required the utilities to file advice letters showing what the rate impact is associated with the implementation of the fixed charge prior to their implementation of it. We've gotten their initial advice letters based on estimated revenue requirement numbers, and they have been able to show that rates will decrease. It's actually pretty well aligned with what we had estimated in the decision. SDG&E, because they're the first ones who are going to be implementing this, they also have filed their final advice letter on this topic. And once again, it confirms that there is going to be a rate reduction compared to the counterfactual where there is no income graduated fixed charge. And we'll be getting the final advice letters from the other two utilities as well prior to implementation.
Thank you, Ankit and Cheryl. Appreciate the information and looking forward to following.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
so much.
Hey, I see Roman has joined. Welcome. I see you. Okay, it's 2:25. Am I allowed to call an audible and move our break to now before we dive into the next big discussion topic, or does it have to stay in the order that it is agendized?
Yes, you can.
It's up to you.
Okay, all right, great. Let's take a 5-minute break. Come back at 2:30. And at that point, we will move to item 6, which Chris is going to lead for us. Thanks, everyone.
Since this is just one idea, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so I think this is my fourth meeting. So I'm still really excited to be here. Kind of new kid on the block, energy, new person at work. So I want to make sure that we're maximizing everything we can get out of this body. When we all joined, I'm sure we all joined with a lot of idealism around what it would look like. And for me, I think there's still more juice left to squeeze out of this. So I want to make our terms the best they can be, and everything I'm going to present here is in that spirit. So I hope that that's how you'll receive it. I think we have significant potential to influence agency planning and investments impacting DACs. And I think it's going to require more of us and a more systematic approach in order to kind of increase those equity outcomes. So first, yeah, I just want to acknowledge in terms of engagement, all of us here have competing priorities. And as such, we've seen it already here today. Member participation is low, inconsistent. And that's both an attendance thing as well as an active engagement issue during meetings themselves and with our subject matter. Similarly, agencies and utilities are reactive in this space very often, I've found, rather than approaching this space with intention based on planned or recurring or predictable efforts or processes. Some of that might be overstated, but I hope you'll follow along with me in this new setup we could have to make sure that we're covering each of the working group subject matters kind of more systematically and really leaning into the strengths that each member brings to this group. So in terms of agenda setting, it's kind of a general call for who might have a topic. We might have agencies or utilities raising their hands depending on what's going on in their worlds to bring topics here. But we're generally operating without consistent processes, leadership, or measurable objectives as it relates to covering all of our potential subject matter. We're also not systematically measuring kind of our baseline for where things are starting and improvements over those baselines over time as agencies conduct their business through planning processes and investment processes. So how do we know that this body is making impact with regard to agency planning and investments? And how do we know that agencies are doing a good job living up to their own standards as it relates to equity, inclusion, diversity? So I think we can do more to kind of measure impact on both levels. So again, my goal here today is to generate discussion and build consensus around a new approach for increasing both engagement and our effectiveness, covering our subject matter more systematically and proactively with respect to those agency planning and investment processes, but respecting the real capacity constraints we all have. Next slide. So yeah, this is sort of for the good of the order. I think all DACAG members and agency staff know what our working group and priority areas are, but for the public's purposes, these are our working groups: affordability and disconnections, the EPIC program, the electric program investment charge, long-term planning, which includes SB 100, SB 350, the integrated energy planning report series, offshore wind, lithium valley, et cetera. Tribal and community engagement and participation, building industrial gas system decarbonization and clean renewable hydrogen, electricity reliability, resiliency, and load flexibility, including distribution, transmission, grid planning, and distributed energy resources, and then electrification, transportation, electrification, zero emission transportation, as well as workforce training and development. Those are our 8 subject matter areas, and a part of my goal here is to make sure that we're having meaningful engagement with each and every one of these subject matters, working group priority areas throughout the course of our term, and really mapping all the agencies' planning investment processes relating to these 8 areas and making sure that we aren't sort of missing opportunities to chime in on relevant planning and investment processes. So that's a part of my intent here. Next slide. So yeah, I've kind of laid out a problem statement. You've gotten snippets of the vision, but just to move through it a little bit more systematically, I envision a proactive, collaborative, and diverse advisory body driving accountability, transparency, and equitable inputs and outcomes across all priority areas through structured, empowered participation. So what that looks like is we purposefully engage with all of our subject matter areas. So as I mentioned on the last slide, we went through each of those working groups. How can we make sure that in the course of a calendar year or a DACAG term, we're doing meaningful work in each and every one of those areas? I know there's a ton of agency activity in each of those areas. So how do we make sure that we're intercepting those planning and investment processes at the right time? And that's part of what we'll try to do here. Collaborative action, yeah, as I tee this up, it's going to require more from us as members, including coming to all of these meetings, as well as some more structured engagement through our working groups. But it's also we're also going to be asking more of agencies and utilities with defined expectations for all parties involved. Of course, in my view, everything we do here is equity centered. That's our purpose in serving disadvantaged communities who disproportionately are impacted by pollution and are often underinvested in with regard to some of the investment activities by agencies and in general. So how do we have measurable improvements in DAC outcomes across all of our policy areas through the agency's work and through our advisory to agencies about that work? So we're going to need to be accountable for that. So tracking and reporting, I think this will enrich our annual report each year, for example. Members will need to be sort of empowered through receiving that agency and utility information and data around those planning and investment activities in a timely manner at relevant junctures when those activities are happening, before they're happening, before the ship has sailed, hopefully. And then, yeah, just given that this would be a little bit of a revised approach, how do we continue to evaluate how we approach our business to know that we're effective at it? So how do we tweak our practices over time to maximize our equity outcomes? Next slide. Yeah, so these next couple slides will lay out what I think are some member obligations as well as some agency and utility obligations. So I hope we can build some consensus around these, but regular attendance, I think I made this up, but I say 80% of all DACAG meetings annually. I think it would be great if every member came to every meeting. So how do we support members in being able to regularly attend? For me, it starts with making a decision that this is important and scheduling everything else around it to the maximum extent possible. So I hope you'll join me in challenging yourself to join every meeting, barring, of course, unforeseen circumstances. Also participating in assigned working groups. Right now, we don't have standing working group meetings, but what would it look like to have a standing working group meeting where agencies bring relevant cues for us about ongoing or regular processes related to that subject matter? Of course, providing advance notice when absence is unavoidable. I think members already do a pretty good job at that, but yeah, we really need to increase attendance to maximize our effectiveness in order to, for instance, not just keep kicking the can on approving meeting minutes, things as simple as that, let alone making substantive impact on our subject matter. Closely related to attending, participating. We all have expertise, views, or at least questions to share. So come off mute, contribute substantively to discussions, volunteer for working group leadership roles, engage constructively with differing viewpoints. That that's a muscle to exercise. Some of us are better than that than others, but yeah, I think we're all a part of this space, acknowledging that there are systemic challenges that DACs grapple with every day, and engaging constructively can mean sharing viewpoints at odds with what's being shared with us. So I think that's something we can support each other in normalizing here. I also think sharing, to the extent we can, community perspectives and knowledge without speaking for those communities, but amplifying viewpoints we've heard and engaging with those communities through the course of our work, which I know we all interface with communities in different ways in our work. So being a conduit to share perspectives and knowledge and leadership that you encounter through your work in this space. Preparation, reviewing meeting materials in advance of meetings, ideally completing any pre-work or research. For me, that often involves Googling acronyms or pieces of legislation that inform agency processes to even just get a sense of what the intent of that legislation was, submitting agenda items in advance. I think what I'm going to propose as it relates to working group structure will facilitate generating agenda items without necessarily needing to be a creative genius so much as following threads of what's happening already at agencies with regard to those working group subject matters. And then, yeah, staying current on those priority areas, especially to the extent that each of us have signed up for each of those working groups, setting yourself some Google alerts or reading relevant trade publications, et cetera, in that subject matter. Communication, yeah, we're constrained somewhat by Bagley Keene and meeting kind of outside of this space. We can't have quorum, but sharing information between working groups in general meetings, elevating community needs and concerns, sharing expertise openly. A little bit duplicated there, but I hope you get the drift. Next slide. And on the flip side, as I alluded, it's not just us. We need some additional support from agencies and utilities. So how can we secure timely data relevant to each of those working group areas, including not just data, but information on what planning, research, investment activities agency is conducting in that issue area, timely information about proceedings, community meetings, et cetera. I think developing a calendar of what relevant activities are happening at the agency level, relevant to each of those working group areas. Again, defining metrics and KPIs, so collaborating with members, agencies, utilities to define meaningful focal metrics and KPIs for that working group. So for example, disconnections, affordability and disconnections are our first working group that we name, but I can't currently tell you what the disconnection rate is in California or what that looks like across utility territories. So how do we baseline information to know if things are going well or going poorly and what the agencies therefore need to do to kind of right the ship? So proactive agenda support, again, this sort of follows what I mentioned around data sharing, having a heads up around those recurrent processes, critical decision points, regulatory milestones, solicitations that will allow us to grapple with that subject matter in an intentional and structured way for each working group. And then an accountability cycle. So participating in impact reporting, tracking progress on recommendations, understanding the disposition of agencies, utilities with respect to our recommendations. We'll say things in this meeting and then it's unclear what happens with that feedback. So how do we have feedback loops where we know what happens with our feedback over time? Similarly with public feedback processes, we hear a lot about workshops and public meetings, but what happens to the public's feedback or community-based organizations' feedback as it relates to informing the direction of a work product? So yeah, in summary, ideally agency leads will be designated for each working group to ensure consistent communication, resource allocation, and implementation of our recommendations where possible. Next slide. So I'm going to keep this brief because I'm starting to repeat myself. But for working groups, I think we already do have nominally a lead for each of those working groups. So we should confirm the lead has capacity to sort of lean in this way that I'm requesting, starting with having regular and standardized working group meetings. So how do we establish a predictable meeting cadence? Again, I think if we schedule those collaboratively, we can help to ensure robust attendance for them. We need good attendance as the basis for our impact, both in working group meetings and in these regular sort of plenary meetings. We can facilitate that by using standardized meeting agenda templates, taking shared notes, ensuring action items and owners are clear, again, respecting Bagley-Keene and other constraints on our work. Subject matter scoping, clear definition of each working group's scope, objectives, annual priorities tied to measurable equity outcomes, ideally. Data-driven subject matter advisory, so empowered with the metrics we need to help inform agencies, planning, research, investment activities, review progress against those baselines in a regular way, whether monthly or semi-annually or annually, to know that agencies work in each working group subject matter is working as it relates to sort of bending the curve on some of the equity problems we see every day. Just briefly, we'll need strong feedback loops from the working group and our monthly meeting. Yeah, agency liaisons for each working group, maybe utilities as well. We need cross-working group collaboration, ideally. We acknowledge that lots of that subject matter is overlapping, and I think a question emerged around where a specific issue might fit in terms of the working groups, and we probably came up with 3 different working groups that might be relevant for that one issue. So how do we share information across working groups respecting sort of the constraints posed by Bagley-Keene? And then onboarding. So how do we, in a structured way, for any new incoming members, give them a sense of each agency's work and that working group subject matter, history of those issues, current priorities, as well as any baselining we've done for metrics, as well as DACAG recommendations and actions in that working group subject matter. Next slide. Almost done, y'all. Thanks for bearing with me. This is 8 out of 10, so almost there. Say a little bit more about metrics, KPIs, and accountability. You've heard me soapbox about disconnections as one clear example of the need to have data to start out with to know what's working, what's not. But we need baselines for each of our working groups areas. So some of what we can do here is go back to our list of working groups and start to brainstorm what some of those key performance indicators might be. But continue that work in the working groups themselves once we're able to stand up recurring meetings. And I'm going to give us an action plan on our next slide to consider how we might do that and when, hopefully approachable in terms of the cadence of all that. Progress reporting template. So again, based on what we know to be the agency's work in that area, as well as some baseline metrics we want to start out with, how do we standardize quarterly reports to ensure consistent tracking, attendance and engagement. Yeah, we want to do better than we have in the past with the goal of 100% attendance and participation in all meetings, including working group meetings going forward if we can. So tracking attendance as a starting point for engagement, but also supporting members and feeling empowered to use their voice in both this space and working groups. And yeah, this one I might have been a little bit effusive, but a public accountability dashboard. So what would it look like to centralize all of our equity metrics in one place as it regards each of those working group areas, including disconnections, as a way for the public to know some of the key equity outcomes related to agencies' work. And in turn, our work informing agencies' work. I think that a more systematic approach to our subject matter, making sure that we're doing a comprehensive job at covering all of the agencies' relevant work in that area can greatly enrich our annual impact assessment report. Yeah, we can, in a meta way, sort of review the structure of what we're proposing with working groups, as well as process improvements for how we conduct our business alongside agencies and utilities. We'll, of course, refine our metrics and measurement approaches over time. And I think in turn, have some more accountability to the public. Next slide. So here is a prospective timeline. May or may not be reasonable just based on how busy everybody is, but I'm throwing all of this out there for discussion and something for us to react to. So within the next 30 days, immediately, discussing and building consensus for updating our approach. So that is this, continuing this discussion to figure out how we can increase attendance, engagement, and impact. Confirming our working group leads and agency liaisons, developing templates for working group, meeting agendas, goals, metrics, and reporting, and scheduling those regular working group meetings. And then over the next few months, establishing key working group level goals. So what is our goal? What is the DACAG's goal with respect to disconnections? Do we want to be the first state in the nation to abolish utility disconnections? I think that would be pretty rad. But that's me soapboxing and not the sense of the group. So we need to discuss what our goal is with respect to disconnections and everything else on our plates. Beginning regular working group meeting cycles with standardized agendas, inventorying those relevant agency planning and investment processes with support from agencies, of course, and initiating some of the initial data sharing that we need. 3 to 6 months conducting our first KPI review and progress assessment, implementing cross-working group learning and collaboration sessions, and adjusting processes based on initial implementation. Then annually, comprehensive impact assessment across all of our priority areas. In a meta way, again, looking at our processes and structure and thinking about ways to improve sort of internally, looking at our working group leadership structure and potentially rotating leads so that we're providing members opportunities to share leadership and making sure we have diverse voices in those spaces and strategic planning for the next year. So that's all I have. The next slide are just a number of discussion questions for us. So am I coming in too hot? What's your general feedback about this approach? What aspects of the framework do you like the most or find most challenging or beneficial? Commitments, what additional support do you need to attend each and every meeting? If scheduled collaboratively, are you willing and able to commit to attending additional working group meetings? Do you need to decrease the number of working groups you're signed up for to be able to engage regularly? Are you open to partnering with agencies to lead a working group? And then ideas for implementation. If not this proposal, what do we do? We gotta, in my opinion, we gotta do something. So how do we increase attendance, engagement, impact? If not through this proposal, what are your ideas? And then measuring success, what support do we need from agencies and utilities to measure our effectiveness and measuring their effectiveness? And how do we evaluate the effectiveness of our own system structures, processes? That's all I've got. So I appreciate y'all for indulging me and looking forward to getting your thoughts on this proposal.
Thank you so much, Chris. This is, I just have so much, just deeply impressed and grateful for you putting in the work and thinking about this and coming in with the energy that you have. I've got to turn it over to public comment first, and then I'm hoping we can have a rich discussion about this.
Thank you. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 6. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and will alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to mute and unmute. Seeing no one in the room, I'll go to WebEx. Seeing no raised hands, I'll pass it back to you, Julia.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so let's talk about this. I'm in agreement that, you know, I think there's more that we can do together. I think that, you know, we've talked a lot about, we've made a lot of requests, I'd say, of the agencies we collaborate with in terms of the accountability feedback loop, in terms of providing us with information about being proactive. And I think there are things, you know, I think it's a two-way street. I think we all contribute a lot of time and energy to this. And I think that there's possibly ways that we could work. The thing that's coming to my mind is work smarter, not harder. I don't know if that's the right idiom, but you know, I'm in particular really interested in the idea of establishing baselines for the things that we're tracking and then tracking progress against those baselines. I also would love to see an increase in meeting attendance and then also meeting participation. And I have a hypothesis that if these meetings were more engaging and we had sort of more direction, if we were more self-directed, potentially that could help with both attendance and participation. You know, if folks feel like this is a worthwhile space to engage in, where we are seeing the impact we're making on the communities we all care about, then I think that just makes it easier to show up every month, right? So those are just some of my initial thoughts. I also want to acknowledge, like Chris has, that everyone's real busy. And same, you know, that goes for members of this group, but also staff. And there might be some, you know, true operational constraints or technical constraints that I would want to hear from staff and also legal about. But yeah, let's dive in. I would love to hear what other people think. Go ahead, Jem.
Thank you, Chris, for this. I had a lot of the same questions, but being new, I was kind of like, maybe I'm not really getting what's going on. So I kind of was just waiting it out. But I totally agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that we're really not being kind to ourselves if we're saying, hey, we're going to do this, but then we're not seeing any value that, since our time is so precious, you know, I think we do have to use it wisely. So I definitely appreciate all of this. I had a draft email that I just never shot back that had a lot of the same comments on it. But then I started like going down the rabbit hole thinking, how can I do this? Or how could we do that? For me, like if I think about the presentation that I just heard, it would be nice to have, you know, different kind of prep materials and even resources afterwards. Like, you know, how do they come up with this study, or where did they get, like, to see how they got some of these numbers and stuff. But it was really disappointing because I did have questions, but at the end when they're like, well, this is kind of done, so now what? You know, that is discouraging to hear. And I know that's a problem all over, but, you know, I think we can start to figure out how we can potentially solve that here for the future. So I definitely appreciate the ideas, and I'm on board.
Thank you, Jen.
Armand, and then Elena, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and team for helping put this together. Yeah, super impressed with the level of thought that y'all have invested in this, right? And Chris, for this presentation. I think it really elevates, I think, a lot of questions we've had over the years, right? Jem, to your point, like I've been here now a couple of years, and I think there's still some questions, right, that come up for me that, you know, are reflected here in what Chris has outlined. I mean, I think for me, what I'm kind of trying to process here, right, and it might have to come back, right, with like additional feedback, right, because there's very rich presentation. And thinking like, what can we do short term versus long term, right? And you know, I think you have your timeline here of what's immediate versus like what is a couple months out. But then I think even then, right, like we might have to unpack some of that, right? Of like, you know, we can definitely have a conversation. We can figure out kind of some of the things that we can do. And I think to Jem's point, right, of like we have very limited time, you know, like precious time that we have here collectively, and then potentially right outside of these meetings, right? So like, how are we trying to maximize that time, and like where can we gather some of this feedback, right? To be able to bring it back, right? Because I don't think we'll be able to cover it all even in this meeting. So like being able to like find that space, but then also just like trying to think through like here, what are the things that we can really focus in on, right? Like attendance, participation, all those. I feel like, you know, I think we can all recommit, right, to making sure that we're doing that, right, and that we're trying to show up and being an active participant with like the KPIs and the metrics. Like I love all of that, right? I feel like we've always asked for some type of baseline, right, to figure out what impact we've made. And then I think it's like probably we'll have to take that back, right? And maybe in our subgroups, right, really like focus in on maybe that's where we spend some time thinking through that and coming back to the whole DACAG, right, and presenting those, right? Like so utilizing that space with subject matter experts a little bit more intentionally beyond just like being able to share or hear from agencies and give them feedback, maybe using that time as well. I think one thing that's come up for me when I say that as well is like one thing, I get these random asks, right, throughout the month of like, hey, there's this proceeding or there's some space that they need feedback, so we're coming to you all. And then I try to scramble to try to find time for that. And this is no knock on anyone. It's just, I think, the nature of it, right? But I think if we could also be more, you know, more intentional about those spaces, like, hey, we all have a window from 1 to 3, right? That particular set of subject matter experts where we can at least like coordinate just like this time, right? But it's for the subject matter experts. And that way it makes it a little bit easier to schedule. Because right now I think it's just being really reactive. And I find that at times really hard. My schedule fills up really fast. So maybe like our subject matter experts have kind of a similar block, right, outside of this 1 to 4, so that they can schedule, or we can try to schedule those times. And if nothing is scheduled, we can use that time to then talk to some of the stuff that we're talking about here. And the last thing I'll say, as I'm still processing all of this, is just thinking about the KPIs, right? And it's like, is that a longer discussion that we need to have also with staff, right, to figure out like what their capacity is, but then like start outlining what our KPIs are for all our priority areas, and like what would be that baseline to start with, and then be able to kind of define something. In the past, we've like added everything to our December meeting, right? And I don't want to do that now, but maybe we do have to, right? And like that's a longer meeting, right, that we have to be able to unpack a lot of what's in here, because I feel like there's a lot of good stuff here, but it might require, you know, longer time to discuss. But yeah, really appreciate it. Really want to uplift like everything you shared here. So thanks.
Elena and then Sarah. Thanks, Roman.
Also, yeah, thank you. I think a bunch of these things are things that have come up here and there in different places, and it's nice to have it as part of a conversation in one place. I just had a few sort of scattered thoughts. I think one is that there are some sort of pieces of low-hanging fruit here that I think that we can try to tackle along the lines of what Roman said, which is we have asked for feedback on like how our feedback has been used by the agencies over time, and we've been getting it more than we used to. And I have no idea if anyone writes it down anywhere. I think what happens is someone says like, hey, we use this idea or recommendation you had. And we're like, oh, cool, that's great. And then like we keep going, right? So one really easy thing to do would have a place where in a meeting, maybe in the notes, we start just writing that down, right? It'd be nice to have a required mechanism for that so that we can have follow-up on things that we've given input to. And at the end of the presentation, we'll say, we will get back to you in 6 months or 9 months and tell you then what we did, right? I think that would be great. But in the absence of that, at the beginning, I think we should just start writing it down in a coherent way, which I don't think it exists. A second thing, I think, to what Jem said, and I'm thinking about joining myself. I was really confused for months when I joined the DACAG. I think everyone joins at different times. I had no idea how anything operated, and I was like, what are the small SMEs? What is this? What if we had like a buddy system? I know I got an onboarding, but I think the onboarding didn't make any sense. Like I think 2 months in, it would have been really nice to have a conversation with somebody. It might be nice to have a buddy where you just like get a chance 2 months in to say, okay, I've gone to a couple meetings. I have a million questions about how this actually works, what we're doing, and how decisions are made and things like that. Maybe as we bring people on, there's an opportunity that we identify who that person is to sort of ask questions and how things are rolled out. I don't think that should be a huge time lift, but I think would help with that sort of onboarding process. And then I like the idea of working groups. I don't know how often everyone would be able to meet. I do think that certainly sitting down and brainstorming together what we think the priorities are in each of those that we want to make sure that we get to connect with agencies on would be really helpful, rather than doing it in the reactive way that we often do, or the sort of individual, hey, I have an idea. Like having an active conversation, I think would be super valuable. The last thing that I do want to flag from a time commitment standpoint, obviously everybody has a lot to do. My concern is that if there's too much of a requirement to participate in a million small working groups and other things like that, that in particular, folks who are coming from under-resourced organizations that do not have committed funding to spend flexible time on things that they want might get blocked from participating in this space, right? And so we just want to be cognizant of the fact that this, SME meetings aren't funded, right? And that time isn't funded. And if you're at a well-resourced organization, you may have that flexibility, but that is not necessarily, I think some of the people that we may want to participate in this group the most may have the least of that sort of time and monetary capacity to do so. And again, I think that's just a tension to name. That's not that we shouldn't step up and spend time that we can. But just to sort of be aware of that when we're thinking about what our expectations are. That's what I got for now.
That's great, Elena. Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I have a lot of thoughts as well. I probably maybe had a leg up when I joined. I've been on about a year now, but I was also part of the formation and staffed the group as it was forming and figuring out all what could be paid for and what there was budget for and type of stuff from the beginning. So I love the energy and bringing structure to it. That I actually was like, I would love to write a grant with you. This is how I like to organize my thoughts. And I've for a long time been advocating for us to have at least more of a planning session, where we actually get together in I just feel like the virtual meeting forum is not conducive to actual engagement and people participating. Some people are better at it than others, right? So I think that's maybe part of the dynamic we have going on is that, you know, we have monthly virtual meetings and not everybody feels comfortable or included as much in commenting. So I know that, and I think maybe even the provision that allows us to do virtual meetings, maybe ending the end of this year or next year, I don't remember. But you know, we may need to plan for that anyway for 2026. I think that's definitely, at least I know for myself, I'm more engaged when I'm in person with people. And I do feel the strong desire to revisit our list of priority areas and consolidate and make them less. I think we have too many priorities to actively track with the amount of people we have. Regardless of whether or not we're interested or our own personal or our professional lives engage us in those different things. I think we, as a group, we just cannot push the needle on that many topic areas, because as you mentioned, itself includes probably 30 proceedings, or and with the hearings and PPHs and meetings and so good, almost everything that and we have 2 agencies that we're trying to cover as well. So it's a lot, and I think it's probably too much to effectively manage. What else? I think that I will leave it there. So I like it. I want to support it. I agree with Elena's comments. What I do right now is pretty much the maximum of what I can do with the resources that we have at our organization. So if it's something that fits into my work that is funded, but I know this is supposed to be not part of my work, so it's just interesting. But I think that this whole proposal would be something we could turn into something to request additional funding for the DACAG from the legislature also, which I don't know if we're allowed to discuss that here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Others want to chime in? Tonight? Can you unmute?
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. It's just an excellent proposal. I mean, it's about commitment, right? It's that the amount of time that one person could have to accomplish these things would be the big question. As Sarah said, it's like, you're trying to juggle your work and then also work on these topics. And then how do you balance that? And the funding part is something we discussed about when I came in. There was supposed to be funding, and then that was eliminated. So I don't know if there is any hope of bringing that back. But without it, I don't know how easy it's going to be to increase the engagement and then to have subcommittees and discussing different topics. I mean, when I came in, I was so super excited, Chris, like you said. I signed up for every SME because everything, if I liked the title, I said, I want to know more about this. I want to get involved. So I signed up for it, but without really realizing how much time you have to spend to learn about it and comment about it. And yeah, so all that question has to be answered, but I really appreciate that you spend the time going through this whole thing and creating this path, roadmap for us to follow. And I think we should focus on it and maybe just take portions of it and then try to go through it and say, maybe prioritize what's most important and then start from there. But other than that, I mean, I am in full support of it, just knowing that the commitment is an issue for me and for maybe other people too. So thank you.
Thanks, Anay. Other comments, questions, ideas?
I
Yeah, I
forgot to
mean,
lower.
oh yeah,
Oh, go
go.
ahead, Julie.
I was gonna say, as I'm listening to folks, I think what I'm hearing is like strong conceptual support, some hesitations around time and money, some concerns about I think, Elena, your point about how this might impact the participation of the groups that we most want involved. I think that's really real. And it sounds like maybe there are some, just piggybacking on what Sanait is saying, like a few things that we might be able to start with, and then, keep this proposal as like a longer term wish list, but maybe dive into some more immediate things and approach it incrementally. I think there are some, like, my thoughts aren't organized, so I'm just gonna spit some stuff out. There's some sort of even like organizational things that we can do, or structural or visual flags around, like, one, I think, Sarah, I agree, like I would love to see fewer priority areas, more focused priority areas, and do that on an annual basis, like figure out what we're going to have to make some hard decisions. Like, when everything is important, nothing's unimportant. So we're going to have to get really strict about that. And then I think that within that, once we have like a shorter list of priority areas, it would be great to know exactly which proceedings with which agency are, like, have a running list and a visual map of, like, these are the relevant proceedings. Here are the calendars to the extent that we know them. Here are the departments and staff who are working on these specific areas at each agency. Because for me right now, it's very nebulous. It's like, if I wanted to go learn more, I would spend a lot of time doing like a lot of digging versus, oh, I should go talk to this person to learn more, or go to this specific website, or attend this proceeding. I think also, once we do that, then we have fewer priority areas. We have more better identified resources or places to go, and then we could work with the people in those departments or on those teams to figure out what are they already tracking, because for sure there's already baseline data. For sure there are already KPIs. So then we could have SMEs working with the staff to figure out what are the ones that we care about. And then then the other piece that's just like a simple change, I think, is anytime we have a presentation or an agenda item, the first like part of the agenda should say, like, this is the priority area that this relates to. Because otherwise, like, I personally don't map that unless it's written down and right there in front of me. And we should have questions that are related back to the metrics that we've set collaboratively or decided to track collaboratively with the agencies. So I think that, to me, that's like one place we could start, is just getting both tighter, but also more detailed on the priority areas. And then using that as a jumping off point for getting into the metrics. And helping to maybe focus our agendas a little bit more. I'm curious what folks think. And Chris, if in particular, if that aligns with your vision, because that's important. Roman?
I'll give some
Sorry,
space to
I
Chris
can't tell.
first, if he wants to initially respond.
Yeah, and Sarah and Elena, I'm sorry, I can't tell if you have hands up or legacy hands or new hands?
Yeah, no, I was trying to figure out how to get it down. I got it off.
Yeah, I made the mistake of hitting that down arrow to hide webinar controls and then spent a couple seconds panicking that I couldn't find unmute. But yeah, I'm just so grateful for everybody's thoughtful feedback on what I've shared. I feel like there's broad alignment that there's some low-hanging fruit that we can make strong progress on without exploding sort of the time commitment involved. But I do think that there's a ton of value in exploring some of the additional ideas shared, including around shrinking our number of focal areas so that we can have kind of a deeper treatment of those, of a smaller number of areas, and members would therefore have more time to participate in a smaller number of focal areas versus having 8. I know many of us are signed up for 3 or even 4. So that resonates. And then, yeah, we also have to hear from our agency partners around what's doable for them. What can they commit to in terms of providing information around the regular planning, research, investment processes. They're working on, I think, there's probably almost 1,000 staff at each of those agencies. We'd be hard pressed to track all of their work, but what are some of the banner kind of items under each of those working groups that we can really hone in on each year? And maybe that changes each year, but regardless of the very specific plan on a going forward basis, I feel a lot of consensus around increasing attendance, engagement, and hopefully impact in each of our focal areas. So I just greatly appreciate all of our members' receptivity to these kinds of ideas and for sharing their own. Ramon?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I think like thinking about the priority areas, right? Like that was our attempt from I think the previous year of trying to narrow down. I think we had way more before. So I do like this idea of going back and revisiting what we have, and then more intentionally and realistically, right? Like focusing on a handful of them. I think what we'll have to balance, right, from conversations I've had with staff before is like, where has the DACAG have been identified as like a core group of engagement? And it might still be all of them, right? But like, I think it might be good to hear from staff, right? Like which of these priority areas is the DACAG now an entity or an organization that must connect with, right? Because that could also really help us then narrow down, right? Because if one of those priority areas is not, then that could help us, potentially kind of deprioritize that. So maybe that's a good follow up there. I think the other piece that, and this is probably just a capacity issue, right? But I think over the years, we've asked for a timeline, right? Like a calendar timeline of upcoming proceedings, right? Or like priorities. I know we get a letter from the agencies at the end of the year, kind of identifying what the priorities are. But I think if there is some of that, forward planning, right, of like knowing this next year, like the climate credit proceeding, right, like that's going to take up the next few months, right, like, and we somewhat know that, right, like, is that something that's elevated to, dedicate more time to it, or, if there's some foresight, like I think would really help us kind of map out if you knew kind of more broadly like what the potential calendar, the yearly calendar could look like, right? That can help us then hone in on those additional priority areas that we want to engage in. And then the last thing is just there are other advisory groups, right? Both at the Energy Commission and at the PUC, right? That are overlapping with us, right? LIOB is one of them. On the transportation side, the Energy Commission has an advisory group, right? And so that could also potentially influence, right? Like what we focus in on. I know we had a lot of subject matter experts in transportation, including myself, right? Like, but is that a key, should that be a priority given that there is another advisory group and other spaces to be able to provide that feedback? So maybe that's also like a part of the landscape that we do, right? Like, are there other groups that are engaging in those issues that then might reduce kind of like our need to be active in it, given that other groups are doing that? But yeah, I just wanted to share those additional thoughts. But yeah, really appreciative of this discussion, and yeah, really look forward to continuing this moving forward.
Yeah, I think that point about both points about like what have we been sort of assigned to on the agency side that we may or may not be aware of, because we don't, we want to be responsive to that. And then, yeah, also using the existence of overlapping advisory groups to help us focus and deprioritize is also, it seems like a good one. It is 3:30. We did, I think, Chris, we covered both items 6 and 7 together here, or 6 and 8 together here. So so that is good. Let's continue this conversation. We'll continue the conversation and sort of regroup on what we heard at the agenda setting meeting. And then I think at the next meeting, come back with either some next steps and actions that we can take in that meeting, or a proposal, a modified proposal to bring to the group. We might even at the next meeting in October start talking about our priority areas. Sometimes we hold that off, but I think we might as well start the conversation. So we'll see what else is on the agenda, but those would be my ideas for next steps. Chris, do you have anything else? Make sure this keeps moving forward.
No, those sound like great next steps to me. I didn't know how this proposal would be received. So for my purposes, I feel like my goals are more than met. And yeah, just thanks again to all of our members' receptivity around how we can level up our engagement and impact.
Awesome. Thank you again, Chris, for taking this on. And thank you everybody for your support and contributions to the conversation. Sarah?
I'm sorry, before we move on to the next item, I did have a question because I apologize, I missed the last meeting, but and I know we had discussed meeting in October in person so that we could go to the EPIC forum, and I know that's not or symposium. Was that September? Was that this week? I don't remember. I know it's not happening any longer, but I still really feel like we should be planning a meeting in person.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that at the next agenda setting meeting, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, great. All right, we are now on item 9, our priority areas. And I don't think we take public comment on this one. I will give a couple announcements to kick us off. I think this one, both of mine apply more broadly. One is that I presented our annual report to the CEC last week to the commissioners. They, like the PUC, had a lot of good questions and also wanted me to pass on their appreciation for the work of this group as a group and as individuals. So thank you all so much for everything that you do in this space. I also had the opportunity to participate in a workshop on the CEC's JDI proceeding. And this is the second time I've participated in one of those, and I just think that the commission is doing the Energy Commission is doing some really excellent and meaningful work around building engagement for their justice, access, equity, diversity, and inclusion plan. And of course, there's a lot of overlap with the DACAG equity framework. There's one thing I learned there that I wanted to share and also to propose another agenda topic. There was a presentation on the revamp of the CEC's energy equity indicators. And this is something that we gave feedback on. And one of the things we had asked is like, please compare the energy equity indicators to some of all of these other like mapping tools that are out there, CalEnviroScreen, all the other things, and let us know like what is the same and what is different. So they've done that. It turns out that the specific category of energy equity is not well represented in some of these other tools. So my takeaway is that this energy equity indicators map, once it's done and completely updated, actually could provide a new dimension to these maps and some new information that's super valuable that we haven't potentially captured before. I think it would be great for us to get to have that presentation delivered to the DACAG directly. It is kind of long, so we could either do that or we could like share it out to everybody, and it is recorded. Everyone can listen on their own, but I know that's harder. So we'll talk about that at the agenda setting meeting as well. The other thing I learned is that the metric or the indicators or whatever it is that the CPUC uses for measuring affordability, and this is specific to their short-term forecasting. So it's not like the energy equity indicators are a representation of current state, and affordability as the CPUC measures it is different, looking at short-term forecasting. But it does not, when it looks at income levels, it does not take into account household size, and it does not take into account other income, other indicators that scale with household size. So that was a big surprise to me. I need to learn more about it. But that, of course, suggests that you could be looking at two households of the same income, one of which has one person in it and the other has 5, and sort of evaluating the two of those at the same level based on energy affordability, which seems like a problem. I'm sure there's much more information behind that and explanation behind that, but just wanted to bring that here. Maybe others are more aware of this than I am, but potentially a future topic that we could discuss specifically related to the affordability priority area. And with that, I will pass it on to any other DACAG members who have updates.
So this was not in my capacity as a DACAG member, but I did participate in the climate adaptation workshop for the climate adaptation vulnerability assessment at the PUC in San Francisco in late August. There is going to, I believe, be another workshop very soon. And I actually wanted to pass the floor over to Zara in Southern California in case folks want to attend. Zara, can I call on you to give an update on the next steps for that?
Sure. Yeah, I was going to provide this at the agency announcements.
Oh, okay. We can wait then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
I don't know if we're supposed to report things that we did outside of our DACAG capacity, but I also attended a PD8, a public participation hearing of the CPUC. I believe it actually fits under 2 of our priority areas. So it was like in long-term natural gas, long-term planning, and they're listed differently here, but gas system decarbonization. It was about SB 1221 implementation, which is legislation that is being implemented that directed the PUC to do some, or the IOUs to do some pilots on zonal decarbonization and using the funds that would be saved from maintaining gas lines and using those to electrify homes. So there was a workshop, I don't remember the date, and then there was also a solicitation that I believe was over a week ago, where they were asking for communities that might be interested in hosting a pilot.
That's great. Thank you both. Okay, seeing no other hands and being conscious of time, I'm going to go to item 10, which is Low Income Oversight Board. And we actually, I believe we have a representative from the CPUC who is here to provide a brief update on the last LIOB meeting that took place last week. Jen Gordon, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Thanks for waiting.
Thank you, Zara. Yes, nice to see you all. I feel like last year I saw you guys at a meeting and I briefly spoke about the 2025 locations. So it's nice to be back. So today I will be providing a brief overview of our most recent quarterly meeting, which happened September 11th, which was last Thursday. Next slide, please. Before I go into the purpose of this presentation, it was an afterthought that I thought of after I submitted this to Zara. I wanted to lead with the Low Income Oversight Board's vision. I don't have a slide for it. I apologize. Like I said, it was an afterthought, but I do want to say that the Low Income Oversight Board's vision is to maximize the benefits of utility, state, and federal low-income programs to improve the health, safety, and comfort of low-income customers while reducing energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. That's their vision, but you can check out more regarding their guiding principles on the LAOB website, and I'll provide the website in the chat. So the purpose of this presentation is for me to provide you guys with a very high-level overview of key agenda items from our September 11th, 2025 LIOB meeting. And I hope to give you a snapshot of subjects that were being discussed. And of course, I'll try to highlight areas of coordination that the LIOB makes to make informed decisions. Next slide, please. So the first item I'm going to discuss was the joint IOU status report. And the IOUs provided, and when I say IOUs, I'm referring to Southern California Edison, SoCal Gas, San Diego Gas and Electric, and PG&E. So the IOUs provided an update on CARE, FARA, and ESA, and arrearage trends. And there was also a review on how these programs are reaching and supporting disadvantaged communities. Now, there was more specifics on the agenda. When it came to arrearages, the IOUs provided updates on arrearage trends, payment plans, and disconnections. There was also discussion and presentations on the leveraging of federal funds and on impact on rates. Next slide, please. And item number 5 was the CPUC standing reports. And the LIOB received updates from OGA, Energy Division, and the Water Division on legislative affordability and climate initiatives. Now, these standing reports provide ongoing visibility into key CPUC activities, and they also help identify opportunities for coordination and input. A good example that I can provide for one of the CPUC standing reports is with OGA. There has been topics from the legislative subcommittee and they have expressed interest in a lot of different bills that pertain to the Low Income Oversight Board, but specifically SB 647. And so there was a legislative subcommittee meeting that happened on August 19th. And it was interesting because the updates from OGA that was given on the 19th of August, there was more traction that was expressed from OGA on certain bills. So there was new developments from August 19th to September 11th. And so the board got a preview of those. And SB 647 for those that are interested in it. And actually, I should say SB 647 for those that are unaware of it. In short, it would be adding a member to the LAOB. So it does have a direct effect on the LAOB. And that's one of the reasons why I believe the legislative subcommittee and the LAOB are interested in it. And so OGA gave a update on it, and we've been tracking it. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And item number 6, the Technical Advisory Committee, also known as TAC. TAC was created to provide guidance to the Commission on items such as bridge funding. Bridge funding applications were filed by the IOUs late June. And it was 4 applications that were filed by the IOUs, and then eventually it got combined into the proceeding. And for those that are interested in following the bridge application proceeding, it is proceeding number A.25-06-022. And there was at TAC committee meetings, I would say since June, they've discussed and made many public recommendations regarding these applications. And the thing about TAC is that they meet more frequently than the full LIOB, and that's just to ensure timely input. And so during our last week's meeting, the TAC committee, they were able to provide a recap of their recommendations. And these recommendations were brought to the full board, and these recommendations were ratified. And if you are interested in seeing all of the recommendations in its entirety, they are actually on the LIOB website under previous LIOB meetings under item 6. And another significant reason why TAC is so important is they are able to provide a lot of guidance to the Commission. Just wanted to throw that and reiterate that again. Okay, next slide, please. Item number 7, subcommittee reports. So the LIOB has, outside of the full board, it has 5 subcommittees. I just mentioned the TAC committee, but in addition to that, it has LENA, LAHEAP, Legislative, and Water and Climate Changes. And the subcommittee, item number 7, this was an opportunity for members to adjust their participation, to strengthen coordination and community representation, and also identify any potential action items for the board to consider. And of course, also provide updates. And next slide, please. And that is all. I do want to say that all of the items that I mentioned, they are standing items. So they are constantly on the agenda. And we normally, the conversation is always evolving with the LIOB when it comes to these standing items. So I will stop talking. And if anybody has any questions, I'll do the best I can to answer.
Thank you so much for that, for being here. It's helpful to know what the conversations are at the LIOB, and also kind of speaks to our earlier point of like, if conversations are already happening about some of these things in other areas, maybe that's something we take off our plate or address in a different way, more collaboratively. So that's helpful for me. Anything from the DACAG members before Jen goes?
Yes, please.
Go
Hi,
ahead.
Jen. I'm curious in sharing the ESA, the CareFair ESA reporting information, whether some of that is pursuant to some of the data points we were flagging interest in earlier on in the meeting. And if you weren't here for earlier parts of the meeting, I can take a look at the LIOB agenda and see if there are potentially some efficiencies we can capture in to the extent that the LIOB and DACAG are asking for the same data, not make additional work for the agencies by representing some of the same stuff.
Yes, I actually am going to defer to my supervisor, Ankit Jain. I think he can provide some insight on that.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for the question. Yeah, so that standing report primarily involves the IOUs providing an update on kind of their budget spend up, to date for the given calendar year, progress on the benefits that they've provided to customers, just kind of giving an indication as to where the program is going to be when we get, especially when we get closer to the end of the year. That information helps provide guidance to the commission as far as what recommendations they should be making for the bridge funding cycle and for the next program cycle as well. So that's definitely information that we can share with the DACAG as well. All those meeting materials are posted to the website, and so they're publicly available. If you have questions about specific pieces of information, we can help identify whether that is part of what the IOUs present. And so, yeah, we're happy to help with that. Is that responsive to your question?
Yes, thank you very much. And Jen shared the most recent presentation in the chat, and I'm just taking a look at some of the data and find it relevant to some of what we were just discussing. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. They provide an overwhelming amount of data in those presentations. So happy to help parse any of that if that's helpful.
And then my second question, Jen or Ankit, I obviously know everything about bridge funding applications, but for the good of the order, can you share for our members what those are?
Yeah, I can give you some insight there. So the current program cycle for the CareFair and ESA programs is scheduled to end at the end of calendar year 2026. Given the timing of where we are and when the IOUs indicated that they would be able to submit their applications for the next program cycle, it seemed likely that the commission would not be able to go through all of the steps and write and vote out a decision authorizing the next program cycle by the end of, well, really, the utilities need those decisions adopted by middle of 2026 because they do need some transition period to implement any program changes prior to the start of the next program cycle. Given that, the direction that the commission gave to the utilities was to file applications for bridge year funding for calendar year 2027, just to make sure that there is continuity in those programs. And then they do intend to file full program cycle applications, which would start in 2028.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ankit and Jen. Thanks for being here. Okay, item 11, agency.
Oh, sorry, I just had one question, Julia.
Oh, yes,
Sorry.
please, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, Jen, thank you so much for sticking around and sharing the slide deck. Just quickly on the set of bills that the LIOB kind of prioritized, can you share more? Like, were those identified by the legislative committee, or was that OGA who identified and then brought them to the legislative committee and or the full LIOB? And I just ask because I think that's one area where we haven't really spent a lot of time in, right? There's a lot of, obviously we already have a lot on our plate, right? So not trying to add more, but there's been some bills that have been flagged, but not many. And so just curious, like what process like y'all go through to flag and then maintain an updated like list of bills and or like, activity on those bills?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a great question. one thing I will say about OGA is they're very good about understanding bills that pertain to the Low Income Oversight Board. But if there are specific bills that a board member from the legislative subcommittee or just from the LIOB request information on, then I'm happy to relay that to OGA, and they're very good about providing updates to that particular board member or at a meeting.
Got it. Good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Hi, this is Zara from the CPUC. I just wanted to add, just in terms of context for members that may not be familiar, that the Low Income Oversight Board, they meet quarterly and they meet in person. And then the subcommittees meet sort of at a like ad hoc basis. Just if that is interesting to anyone.
Hint, hint. Thanks, Sarah. Sarah?
Thank you for that report. It's always good to hear about the LIOB, and it's always so crazy how much I think our work overlaps. But then I remember that we are advising two agencies, and they are focused on one agency, which makes it a lot easier to coordinate, I think, and staff. Just a reminder.
Thank you.
Okay. Great, thanks for the discussion. Item 11 brings us to agency announcements, and we will start CEC.
Thank you, Julia. I was trying to find the mute button there. So Dorothy Ramey with the CEC. As was mentioned before, CEC today celebrated its 50th year anniversary. All the work that has been done over the 50 years is really a big it has a cumulative effort. And, you know, it's not staff, it's not just the historical number of people who've created or made up the commission over the years, but every member of the public, every organization that has commented, participated, and added suggestions, including the DACAG, on how we should do our work, programs, and procedures. So just a big thank you to all of you in being part of that history for the CEC as well. Wanted to share a few updates for that are upcoming. Just at the top of your minds for upcoming is the EPIC Symposium, and that's coming up in early October. Oh, apologies here. So that's coming up in early October, and we also have some other workshops coming up here in September, just highlighting. And this will be sent out to you all. But there's a building decarbonization workshop for equitable building decarbonization coming up in September 30th. There's also going to be a workshop on energy code compliance that may be of interest because of the affordability aspect of those items. And it does actually tie into a few other items that are part of all part of DACAG's priorities. EPIC, as I mentioned, is coming up on October 7th. So for those who are able to participate, we'll send out links for registration, as well as if anyone's coming in person, it's going to be here at the California Energy Commission's headquarters in Sacramento. I think those are the major items I did want to highlight. There is one more workshop for the building decarbonization one has a tribal direct install program guidelines. So for those, for folks who may want to, or who have an interest in that, please feel free to join that workshop. We'll send link and information on that as well. And that's it for me. And let me actually check in with our other colleague. Oh, I have, and now I have a colleague of mine. So this is with a raised hand, if we can unmute them. So that's Sebastian Ruiz with our Energy Research and Development Division. Sebastian, I think you can unmute on your end now.
Yes, thank you, Dorothy. Good afternoon and buenas tardes, everyone joining the DACAG meeting today. My name is Sebastian Rubio Ruiz. As Dorothy mentioned, I'm here representing as a DACAG liaison for ERDD from the CEC and wanted to share an upcoming workshop that we have. So the CEC Mindful Decommissioning webinar will host DNV Energy Insights in collaboration with the California Center for Sustainable Communities at UCLA to present on the newly developed gas distribution system screening tool. This is a resource designed to support California's efforts in identifying promising sites for strategic decommissioning of gas infrastructure. The team will provide a preview of the tool and its core functionalities, highlight the potential applications of the tool, explore how those applications align with the current and future gas decommissioning related policy, and discuss potential future use of the tool through carried out case studies. Webinar is free to attend and available to all members of the public. It will take place on October 8th, 2025 from 5 to 6:30 p.m. We'll include the link in the newsletter, and we'll also place the link in the chat shortly. Thank you.
Great. Shall we move on to the CPUC?
Thank you, Julia. This is CPUC. Just as a reminder, the climate credit will go out for electric customers in October. You can check cpuc.ca.gov/climate credit for the amount by IOU. Mobile homes, apartments, people with solar, everyone residential gets a climate credit as long as you have an active electric account with the IOU. And this is including small IOUs such as Bear Valley, Pacific Core, aka Pacific Power, and Liberty Utility. Credits this cycle are going to be about $60 to $80 for the large IOUs. So that's for PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E. So look out for that on your utility bill. And then as Alina mentioned, we're going to be having our Southern California iteration of our Climate Adaptation Equity Workshop next Thursday, September 25th from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. At the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, or LACI, in the Downtown Arts District of Los Angeles. The Climate Adaptation Equity Workshop will consider potential refinements to the existing CPUC requirements to improve prioritization of equity considerations in the large IOUs climate adaptation vulnerability assessments, or CAVAs. The purpose of the CAVAs is to identify strategies to mitigate risks to utility infrastructure due to extreme conditions caused by climate change. So the workshop will engage a broad range of stakeholders and tribal folks to inform refined requirements to developing measurable criteria and metrics, as well as refined community engagement processes, which is part of task 2 of the climate adaptation proceeding. And that is all I have. I'll wait a second to see if any other CPUC colleagues have any items they would like to announce. Seeing none, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Zara. Thank you, everyone, for your updates. That brings us to item 12, which is agenda setting and attendance. We are past 1. So if you are interested in, I have a list of the agenda items that we've talked about today for the next meeting. Staff do a really good job of tracking those as well. If you have any others, please send them to Dorothy and Zara, and they'll make sure that we consider them on our next agenda meeting. And then we will also be talking about an upcoming in-person meeting at our next agenda setting meeting as well. And with that, we are on item 13, which is public comment, just general public comment on the DACAG's work. Hand it over to Zara.
Thank you, Julia. We'll now welcome public comment on item 13. This public comment period is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and will alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to mute or unmute. Seeing no one in the room, let's go to the WebEx. Give it a moment. Seeing no hands, I'll pass it back to you, Julia.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 14, which is adjournment. We are officially adjourned. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you for a great meeting. I will see you again on Friday, October 17th. Thank you, everybody.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.